Anyway, hi.
Hi.
So I'm Janna Willoughby-Lohr, and thank you for having me here. When I first went away to college, I went there to be a poet. I've been writing poetry since I was 5 years old, and I initially was drawing poems as pictures because I would see whole words in my head and I would just draw them out and say, "Hey Mom, look at my picture," and she'd say, "This is a poem, where did you get it?" So it's something that has always come really naturally to me, is using words and sharing them with people, and so I had this creative writing scholarship that my mom had applied for me. And I went to this school, teeny tiny little school outside Asheville, North Carolina. There were 800 students, 1,100 acres of land. So if you wanted to be alone, you could be alone. And it was a very different experience for me. And when I went there, I was the only kid from Buffalo in the whole place. But when I got there, thinking I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a poet. I'm going to major in creative writing. This is going to be so great. And then I realized they didn't actually have a creative writing major. They had an English lit major, and I was like, well, I don't want to be an English professor. That's not what I want to do. So I started looking through the course catalog during freshman orientation saying, okay, well, if I'm here in this scholarship, I'm going to stay here. What else can I study? And I looked through and I saw that they had an entire book arts department. And you could take papermaking classes and bookbinding classes and printmaking. I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. I didn't even know you could take classes at, let alone that they had them at this tiny little school that I went to. And I went and met with that professor and I was like, hey, I want to get into these classes. She recommended a couple that were not already full of upperclassmen art majors. And I took those classes and totally fell in love with book arts. I'd always been doing collages and things like that. My mom did rubber stamping, and we had little screen printers and lino cut carving tools and things all over my house. I didn't realize as a kid that I had already been doing book arts. I just didn't know that's what you call it. And I just knew that that was the perfect way to take all of the sharing and the poetry that I was doing and turn it into something that is more of a full body experience. You can do poetry for a lot of people, but some people just, they don't get it, right? But if you tell someone a story and there's tactile aspects to it, it changes it. And after I did all that my freshman year, went and met with my advisor at the end of that year, and I was like, hey, these are all the classes I took. What major am I working toward? And he says, those are all electives, so nothing. Yeah, but this is back in the day where you could not just take unlimited student loans. So I was like, well, I can't waste this year. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford 5 years. What am I supposed to do now? And he asked me one question that changed my whole life. He said, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I want to be an artist and I don't want to be broke. How do I do that? And he said, you should do that as your major. And I looked at him like he was insane. Like, that's not a major. If it was, all the artists would take it. And he said, we have a major here called integrative studies. You already know at 19 what you want to do for your whole life. Do you know how rare that is? He's like, you should figure out how to do that, because if they knew how to teach somebody how to make money with art, they would. And long story short, made up my own major, put entrepreneurial business and creative art together as one course of study, and spent the rest of my college career figuring out how to make and sell art. But selling art is not like selling any other products, right? Buy one, get one doesn't work. It's not why people buy it. And that's a big part of what I had to do during pitching this major. Is like, how can I figure out what's the difference between artists who are successful and artists who are not successful? What do those successful artists have that unsuccessful artists don't have? What is that skill? It took me a while to figure it out, but it's social work. It's learning how to work with people and getting people to say things they don't know how to say, and hearing what people are saying when they're not actually saying it, and putting together all those little clues to really understand who people are and when people are coming from different backgrounds. Some people like to be talked to in a certain way. Other people like to be talked to in a different way. And figuring that out, like, that's how you can actually make money with art. Because I don't sell anything, right? It's all about telling the story. And if you know how to tell somebody's story in a way that they really feel it, they buy the experience of how it makes them feel. So that was the main thing I learned in college. But my junior year, 3 weeks into the school year, on Friday the 13th, my mom died. And she didn't have a will, and had a house here in Buffalo that was falling apart. And I was going to school 900 miles away. And I ended up taking the Greyhound bus back and forth to go to housing court, because they were like, you have to take care of this house. And we were like, we don't actually own the house. We have no money, no nothing. Please just don't take it away from us. But somehow managed to keep the house together through some really amazingly nice lawyers who happened to go to church with my mom, and felt sorry for us kids and helped us with our legal problems. I went back for the end of that semester, figured my stuff out over Christmas break, kind of felt like I was going to be a person again, even though I was 20 years old and owned a home that was falling apart with no money. Went back to school, and I knew that my mom would never want me to quit school. She was like my #1 creative fan. She sent my poems in to get me that scholarship. And when she learned that I was making up my own major to figure out how to make money as a creative person, she was like, this is the coolest thing in the whole world. So I knew that if I had quit and just stayed at home and took the bus to UB and, figured something else out, she would have been so pissed. So I decided to go back to school. Got back there for the second semester of my junior year. It's January. Arrive on a Saturday, go to sleep, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and my dorm is on fire. Right? I know. And I come out of the room onto the porch, and I look across the dorm. It has a big open courtyard in the middle. And the opposite kitty corner of the dorm is like to the sky on fire. And I was like, oh, well, they better put that out. It's going to get over here and burn up all my stuff. Not having any idea how fast a fire actually burns. So within 4 hours to the ground, the whole building. And it was on my mom's birthday. First birthday she would have had after she died. And I was like, yo, where's the cancer in the bus? It's coming to hit me. Like, seriously? What is this year? But it changed me. And it would have been my mom's 55th birthday, and I'm definitely a woo-woo person. Numbers mean a lot to me. 5's always been my lucky number. So for me, it was really obvious that if it happened on her birthday when she would have had 2 lucky numbers, it was not a coincidence. Not necessarily to be one of those people that's like, everything happens for a reason, because sometimes things just suck. But she sent that to me for a reason. And initially I was like, okay, well, that means there's 2 lucky things. One was really obvious. Me and everyone else that was in that building got out alive, which is amazing for 100 drunk college students in the middle of the night. But the other one was a little trickier. And 3 days after the fire, it just hit me. And I looked at my roommate and I was like, dude, all of our shit burnt up. And I started laughing. And she started laughing, and we started rolling around on the ground, because it's just stuff. It doesn't matter. We had no stuff, and it didn't matter. It didn't affect who we were as people. It didn't affect our ability to be successful. And it certainly, all that stuff didn't define who we were. And all of a sudden, I was like 20 years old and running all around the college campus telling all these people who'd also lost their stuff, hey guys, it doesn't matter. Who cares about the stuff? Some people got it, some people did not get it, and probably still don't. But for me, realizing that who I was as a person was not defined by my physical things, and I had lost all of my journals from my whole entire life. All of them. Right? And I see your face over there like, oh my God, no, right? But I had always relied on the things that I put down on paper to define who I was, and to explain myself to myself. But once they were gone, I was like, I have no idea who I am. I'd been relying on that as the truth of who I was. And I was like, oh, I'm a totally different person now. And all the poems that were good enough, I remembered those. And all the other ones, oh well, I can write more. What better impetus to write more than massive amounts of grief and trauma, right? And it really changed the way I operate in the world, but it also sent me into the art studio, and I started making all of these artist books to kind of explain my life and tell the stories of my grief and trauma and coming back to life and my relationship with my mom, and teaching other people the things that she had taught me, because I was like, that's how she stays alive, is by me taking her 54 years and being able to share as much as I learned from her in 20 of mine. And when I started making these books, I started doing these show and tell events where I would bring the books and I'd have a small crowd, maybe 10 people, and I would read the books, tell the story, open them up, show people how they went together, how I made them, all this stuff, and people would cry. And they'd come up to me and they'd say, I'm not the same person I was before I saw that. And I had been making all of these for me. It was like, this is my way of kind of re-documenting things, telling different stories, helping people understand. But I'd never realized that all of those things I was making had the power to change the way other people felt about themselves in the world. And I was like, that's way cooler than making art for myself. And that's why I called my business Papercraft Miracles, because making and sharing this art literally saved me when I legit had nothing. And it's a much longer story than that, but I know I only have 20 minutes. So that whole experience changed the way I operate in the world. It made me a yes person, right? And before that, I had been kind of hesitant, like, oh, well, maybe I'm not so good at that, or maybe I won't go to that thing, or that seems intimidating, those people might be cooler than me, blah, 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 blah. But after that, I was like, life is freaking short. If somebody gives me some kind of opportunity, asks me to come to a place, says, hey, can you come do this thing? Do you want to participate in this? Yes, 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 because you might not get the chance to do it later. Someday is not guaranteed for anyone. And there's so many people that put all of those someday dreams on hold, like, when I'm retired, I'll travel, right? Someday when I can afford it, I'll move to New York City. Okay, no one can afford to move to New York City. You just do it, right? Someday I'm going to do that thing that I think about when I'm falling asleep. And they don't ever do it. And for me, I was like, I don't care what I do for the rest of my life, but I want to do this. I want to have this interaction where I can take all of this crazy that I thought was just crazy inside of my head and spew it out into the world and realize that other people are like, hey, me too. And what does it take to be a yes person? Any guesses?
An open mind.
It helps. Is it cockiness? Delusion? Vulnerability, yeah. Is it unshakable confidence? No. It's the willingness, as my friend Carlos says, to fail relentlessly. Some people say that you have to be fearless, but I don't believe that. And I've had plenty of fear while saying yes to impossible things, and I just do it anyway while I'm afraid, knowing that all the people in my community and the universe will show up to cheer me on. I've said yes to a lot of crazy things. I said yes to quitting my job after I had my first son, and they said, you have to either come back into the office full time or figure something else out. And I said, well, you don't pay me enough to cover healthcare and daycare, so I guess I'm going to figure something else out. I had a huge mortgage, and all of a sudden I had no job, no paycheck, no health insurance, and added expense of having a kid who also needed health insurance. I was like, well, that was terrifying, but what should I do? My husband said, stay home and do your book thing. 2 months into doing my book thing, I was up on Instagram in the middle of the night, scrolling #papermaking, trying to see what other people were doing so I could figure out how to start growing this company that I'd wanted to grow for 12 years before I was forced to quit my job. And I saw somebody with a post that said, papermaking equipment available, with the email address. No likes, no comments, no nothing. Meanwhile, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so I was like, yeah. Emailed them immediately while I had a baby, in the bed, trying not to fall asleep. And I said, I've been trying to start a studio to make paper forever. I finally have a building that's set up to do it, and what you got? They sent me back this whole list almost immediately. She also must have been up in the middle of the night. And for 12 years, I'd had a list of all of the equipment that I would buy someday when I could afford it. every single thing I had on that list was on this list that they had, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Meanwhile, I had like $30,000 worth of equipment on my list. I was like, someday, this is how I could do what I really want to do. She sends this back. Prices are like ridiculous. She goes, let me know if you're interested in any of this. I read through the list. Meanwhile, I'm kicking my husband in the bed. I'm like, babe, get up, get up. He's like, is the baby okay? I'm like, the baby's fine. I found some paper making equipment. He's like, can we talk about this in the morning? I was like, no, I have to buy it right now. Meanwhile, we did talk about it in the morning briefly, but I was like, I got to jump on this. I emailed them and I said, would you take $5,000 for all of it? Meanwhile, I had just quit my job, right? So this is not a great time to spend $5,000, but this was one of those things that was like, this is impossible. We don't have the money for this, but I cannot say no. I am going to pull money out of my savings to buy this papermaking equipment. And I did, and it changed everything. Saying yes to that, even though it was terrifying, changed everything. The next crazy, impossible yes comes in 2021 on my mom's birthday, of course. She always sends me weird, crazy, life-changing things on her birthday. And I get this phone call. It's Friday afternoon. I'm sitting in my studio during COVID, so my assistant is like 8 feet away from me. She's sitting on the couch drinking her coffee. I'm over here drinking my coffee. And the call comes in and they said, would it be possible to make 500,000 plantable seed bombs by March? Meanwhile, this is January 19th, right? Would it be possible? Like, what would a normal person say? Hell no, that's crazy, right? They would be like, that's not possible. But my first initial reaction was, define possible, how much money do you have? Because if they are on that tight of a deadline, there was a reason that they really, really needed them. And I was like, if I had enough money, I could hire enough people, I could train enough people, it's possible. It's possible. My husband thought I was insane. He didn't even think it was a real company, thought the whole thing was a scam. And I was like, I don't care, I'm doing it. They said, send us a bid. Got the call Friday, sent them a bid on Monday. By Wednesday, I had $150,000 in my bank account, half up front. I hired 70 temporary employees, overhauled our entire studio, figured out systems, processes, immediately promoted my 2 10-hour-a-week staff to full-time management, and said, I will give you a fat raise you can't quit for the next 2 months at least. We're in it. But where most people would have been like, that's crazy. I'm never going to shift gears. I'm never going to do that. There's no way. I said yes to something that totally seemed impossible. And I was scared out of my mind. Every morning at 4 o'clock, I would wake up like cold sweat, like I'm going to default on this contract. It's going to be crazy, blah, blah, blah. And then I would get downstairs and I would see all of these people from my community working. They were all working toward this common goal together, right? And not one of those people ever thought or ever said, we're not going to make it. They all were like, we're totally going to make it because she knows we're going to make it. And I'm going to work extra hard so that I can be part of this team. Because it was all these people collectively, kids who were working their first job out of high school, like after school coming in for like 5 hours. There were people who came out of retirement because they were bored and lonely during COVID who came to make seed bombs with us. There were people from temp agencies who had worked 100 jobs that year, and artists and unemployed musicians who couldn't go play in bars during COVID because they were closed. I mean, just all of these people who were like, I'll go and learn a new thing. And it was so much fun every single day because I said yes to something that seemed totally insane. But we did it. We did it. We had less than 8 weeks and we did it. We made 500,000 seed bombs by hand, delivered them to the factory on the day they were due, half an hour before they closed. Were we up that morning with blow dryers, blow drying the last batch to make sure they were dry enough to go in the box and wouldn't get moldy or sprout? Yes, we were. But we did it because I said yes. So how does that make sense in this world today? What do we do with that? Raise your hand if there's a lot of things about the current state of the world that feel really impossible right now. Right. I see you. I feel you. It's a lot. But when one person believes that you can take on something that other people think is not possible, it adds a light to that path, right? You can see a few feet ahead of you. You can start walking into the darkness because you can see a little bit, because there's one person that says, I see a way to the other side. And I think in this insane world that we live in right now, like our own community, the community at large, the world as a whole, we're at one of those points where, like, people like to call it chaos, people like to say it's a crisis, right? My favorite thing to think about is back in college, one of my professors was from China, and he had, every couple of days in class, he would show us a character and tell us what it meant and what all the parts of it were. And my favorite one is the character for crisis. It's two symbols. One means danger, one means opportunity. And I think that's where we're at right now. And there's way more people in this world who are willing to blow that candle out, to say it's not possible, to give up. It's way easier to give up than it is to not. It's way easier to be like, I'm not even going to try. That seems crazy. Than to be the person who's like, I'm going to try to make it better. And even if you fail, if nobody ever tries, where would we be? Right? Like, when you have at least a little bit of hope and relentless pursuit of the impossible, the only answer you'll ever have is a hell yes. That's it, right? Because it's possible. Making things better, it's possible. Because it only takes one person to one person. And you never know when that moment's going to happen, right? You never know when somebody will hear something that you said and say, oh, what? It like flips that light on. It gives them a couple of feet ahead of them. And it changes the way that they think about things forever. That conversation sticks in their mind. That one experience sticks in their mind, and they're like, well, I'm different now. And I think that's what I do every single day of my life, is try to intentionally create as many of those moments as possible. Thank you.